Mark Rogers TV talking Ohio State football. And just about the best way to do it that I can think of is to bring in Claire Crawford from the ozone.net and her show with Joe Dexter. Oh, hail no. Claire, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing so well. Well, I could be better, and I'm sure you know why.
Well, we will talk about how you could be doing better, although I don't think it's correctable this year.
I agree.
But we'll do what we can. We'll let you vent. It's cathartic. Let it all out. Give us your best or your worst. It might be your worst.
I've been holding this in. I'm ready.
Ohio State beats Wisconsin to win the Big Ten championship, 27-21. That game can be interpreted a number of ways. According to the College Football Playoff Committee, Ohio State beat the fourth best team in the country because they're selecting the best teams. So they rank them 1 through 25 as the best through the 25th best. So Wisconsin was the fourth best team in the country entering that game. Ohio State won at 27-21. It was close in score and in situation at the end, but I think if you watch the games and evaluate the play, Ohio State was clearly the better team. Decidedly, they made some egregious mistakes that kept Wisconsin close, but Ohio State won the game and is the Big Ten champion. Champions being a selection of the College Football Playoff Committee upon the launch of this system in 2014. That was just about everything. You have to win a championship. This is key in the formula. Well, that's deteriorated as well. So what was your reaction? I could only imagine, Claire, if we had a camera on you when the logos were unveiled, 1 through 3 were obvious, and then Alabama all over your TV screen.
So I actually this is going to be a real shocker to those who follow me and know me. I was at the gym at the time because they've got this whole row of TVs, and I'm nervously just jumping rope like a boxer getting ready for a fight. And I'm watching it unfold, and I just have this sinking pit in my stomach. I had a feeling they would not get it right again. And there was a part of me that had almost made peace with it, or I thought had made peace with it on November 4th in Iowa City. That the chances of the Buckeyes now going on, and I think the part of me that made peace of it was a part of me that thought if they can lose to Iowa in the fashion that they did, they can give up 55 points to Iowa, that there is not a chance they can go through the remainder of their schedule unscathed. There's not a chance that they can get to the Big Ten championship, not a chance that they can win it. So that's the part of me that made peace with Ohio State not making the playoffs. And the part of me that existed started to fritter away when my hopes were, being raised through the rest of the season when we're watching them obliterate Michigan State and the comeback against Penn State and just do exactly what they were supposed to do. They were in the driver's seat. They were supposed to take care of business. They did. I was not one of those people that thought that they were going to have to win to Wisconsin or beat Wisconsin in a convincing fashion in order to get the nod. The other mistake that the committee made, amongst many, were ranking Wisconsin 6th. If they didn't believe that Wisconsin was a good enough team for Ohio State to have beaten, if they didn't believe that that should have been valued very, very high on Ohio State's resume, then why did they only bump them down to 6, 2 spots? That was my real question. I think that was one major hiccup. The other major hiccup was, The other major hiccup, I think, was the committee not releasing any sort of standard to say why they thought Alabama was better. They just said, eye test, Alabama's the better team. Because there is no standard. There's nothing to say that Alabama is a better team on paper than Ohio State. And that's the real problem I had with it. If anybody has beef Wisconsin has beef that they couldn't have gotten. They're a one-loss team to a very good Ohio State team, 5th in the nation, in a conference championship. I don't know why Wisconsin fans are not waving their flags. USC. I mean, we've talked about that multiple times. I'm befuddled.
So let's connect some dots, because you've set a few really good ones up here. One would be that Wisconsin started the day 4th in the country. They only dropped to 6th. Auburn started the day number 2 in the country. They dropped to 7th. So Auburn dropped to 7th after losing to Georgia in the SEC championship game. So a team that made the Final Four at number 3. So is the committee valuing Ohio State above Georgia? They dropped Wisconsin only 2 spots for losing to Ohio State. They dropped Auburn from 2 to 7 for losing to Georgia. Usually you get, if there's credit to be gained for a loss, more credit when you're losing to a better team than if, of course, you lose to a lesser team, you plummet further down the standings. So they are telling us that they value Ohio State more than Georgia. It's kind of odd.
The other portion that I don't understand, by that logic, and I don't, before I say this, I don't want Clemson fans to jump all over me, because I do believe that Clemson should be in that top 4. I don't think there's any disputing that. However, Clemson is an example of the committee not devaluing a loss to a lesser opponent when they lost to Syracuse and didn't drop. It was October, mid-October. They didn't drop substantially in the polls. Now, it wasn't exactly the blowout that happened in Iowa City, and they were technically without their quarterback for a part of the game. I still don't give them a huge pass, as much of a pass as the committee gave them, but it flies in the face of the idea of not who you beat, but who beat you. Was not one of, apparently it wasn't one of the criteria of the selection committee.
Yeah, so Wisconsin lost to Ohio State, their first loss of the season, versus 12 wins. They dropped from 4 to 6. And as you mentioned, to compare Wisconsin's resume versus Alabama's, tearing the logo off the side of the helmet, they seem very comparable. They seem very comparable because Wisconsin's best wins were against Michigan, Northwestern, and Iowa, that are pretty favorable, comparable to Mississippi State and LSU and Texas A&M. A lot of 8-4 and 7-5 there. And then Wisconsin's loss turned out to be just a 6-point loss to what turned out to be the 5th-ranked team in the country, versus Alabama losing to what turned out to be the 7th-ranked team in the country and losing by 2 touchdowns.
None of it is making sense. And we can't, we can't yell that this is some weird, they're doing this for the ratings, or because Ohio State fills more seats. Ohio State turns on more televisions. Ohio State engages in more streaming in Columbus and Ohio State's market than almost all of college football. So you can't say that they picked Bama for ratings. Now, Birmingham gets good ratings. Alabama gets good ratings. I do understand that. But if you're pitting one against another, it's not like Ohio State was UCF, which they technically are slighted as well. So what I don't understand, I still have yet to connect the dots. I still have yet to do it. And I've said, speaking of strength of schedule, I said it on Twitter the other day, and it was kind of a flip comment, but I think we're going to see a shift. And the real winners here are the Mercers of the world, are the Appalachian states of the world, the Youngstown states of the world, the Sisters of the Poor, the 4-H Club, that all of these teams, all of these Power 5 conference teams are now going to be scheduling, because apparently, just do your business. Just beat Mercer. Just beat the Cupcake. Look decent doing it. Have a really good logo on your helmet, and you're in. No big deal. Why schedule the home and home with Oklahoma? Why schedule a home and home with Texas? Get it off the schedule, because it doesn't mean anything.
What's funny about all this as well is that the Iron Bowl, a game that's steeped in tradition, arguably the greatest tradition in college football, some would say, it turned out to be meaningless, or if anything, it was counterproductive. It allowed Alabama to stay home and not risk losing a game against the top team and secure a playoff spot. And it gave Auburn the opportunity to go and lose its playoff spot. So it was more advantageous to lose the last game of the season for Alabama than it was for Auburn to win it.
And before I get accused of waving my Buckeye flag here and having sour grapes, Ohio State was to their advantage the previous year. We loved it, as Ohio State fans, we loved to see them get into the playoff. But you could argue the same thing, not that it was the same team, but definitely they had the advantage of not playing in the Big Ten championship game, playing one less game, having another week to rest up, and going into the playoff. They didn't do well. Obviously, they got blown out by Clemson, and Penn State ended up going to their bowl game and losing, but a much closer game, a much better game, probably a more deserving team. So, and I don't want to get caught up in the comparison between Ohio State in 2016 and Alabama this year, because Ohio State's strength of schedule still far eclipses Alabama's schedule this year. So it's not exactly the same, but it definitely, as far as not playing in the championship game, it is.
So everybody draws the comparison that you just drew to a certain extent, but then separated from, because you should, because a one-loss team was selected over a two-loss team in both situations, and a non-conference champion with definitely a better resume in 2016, but not a better resume in 2017, was selected over a conference champion. The differences that I'll make right here. Alabama does not have the resume that Ohio State has this year, nor did it have last year, because Ohio State beat a top 10 Michigan and Wisconsin and a top 5 at the finish Oklahoma team. Alabama does not have that on its resume. And if you're looking at conference representation, Penn State fans have every right to be upset about what happened last year. And I was right on here ranting and raving that Penn State should have been selected as the Big Ten champion. But I understood the selection of Ohio State. It made sense if you're looking at overall resume. The Penn State selection I campaigned for, but I understood the Ohio State selection last year. This year, Alabama does not have that resume. Plus, if again, what I was getting to, if you're looking for conference representation, there is no representation for the Big Ten this year. It might have been misplaced last year, but at least there was representation for the Big Ten. There is no representation for the Big Ten. Instead, we've got a 50% SEC field. And I think that is one thing that is key in all this, is that the reason we have conferences that play in different areas of the country is to provide them with representation. So we can only draw so much conclusion of a team's value based on their season, because they play their 8 or 9 conference games, they play a cream puff or 2, and then they play their one, hopefully they play their one Oklahoma, Texas, USC, whoever it is out of conference. But that's the only little slice of intersectional, cross-sectional competition that we see. Otherwise, we don't know. Therefore, that's why we're giving the Pac-12 representation and the Big 12 and the every area, because we really don't know. They're playing within their silo all season. So give them representation.